What is up, fellow developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and in today's video we're going to be learning how to create our own Node.js login system. So as you can see on the screen now, we've got this really nice looking login page, and we can try, let's say we want to go to the home page, we just do /home. You can see it automatically takes us straight back to the login page because we can't get there just yet. So if we enter in here, for example, admin as our username and our password, let's put in the wrong password. I'm going to type Dave and we're going to hit login. You can say it says username or password is incorrect. But if we put in the true admin password, the password is my password, I know, super secure, and we log in, as you can see it logs us straight in. Now we are at our home page, but now let's say if we want to go back to the login page, we can't because we're already logged in. So this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be on a simple login system using Passport and Node.js. Also we've added in a log out there as you saw. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so to get started, we're going to run npm. So make sure you're in a directory, the directory you want your application to be in. And we're just going to run npm init-y to fill it all out. The -y part, all it does was fill it all out so we don't have to enter it all. So if we hit enter, you can see it's created as a package.json file. If we just ls here, package.json. So what we need to do now is install a few dependencies. So first we're going to install a def dependency using the -d flag, and we're just going to type nodemon. Now the reason we need nodemon is that it will keep our node application refreshing so you don't have to rerun it every time we make a change. Let's hit enter and let that install. Okay, now that's installed, we need to install the rest of our dependencies. Now the first one we're going to install, so we'll go to npm I, and that is going to be express. We also need express -handlebars. Now handlebars is going to be our templating engine, so it's just HTML, but it allows us to also pass through variables from Node.js so we can actually get some information through. We're then going to get express-session, which is going to allow us to have sessions inside of our application. So when we log in, it will store and save your session. We're then going to have mongoose because we're going to need some sort of way to connect with the mongodb for our username and password. We're then going to do passport. Now passport is how we actually connect, or how we actually authenticate. We're going to be authenticating through passport. And we also need passport-local, which is the strategy we're going to use. Local just means username and password, or email and password, or whatever you want to use as your username and password to log in. So now we're going to hit enter, and I'll see you once all these dependencies have installed. Okay, now they're all installed, let's just run ls, and as you can see we had a node modules package in here as well as a package.json and package lock. So we're going to now just open this up with Visual Studio Code. So if I run code dot, it's going to open it up here. So let's just full screen this, close that, and place this in its own window. Here we go. So in our package.json, you can see we've got everything we need. Our main file is actually going to be app.js. We're going to delete the script, and we're going to give something, we're going to say start. And here we're just going to say nodemon app.js, and that just means when we run npm start, it's going to run our app.js file, and if we make any changes within this ecosystem, it will automatically update. So yeah, there we go. So let's just close package.json and let's create our app.js file. Now there's a few things we need to do to get started. We're going to need to obviously start our express application, so let's just say express tab is equal to require express. If you're wondering why I'm tabbing out, it just makes it look cleaner once we've done session tab equal require express -session. We then need handlebars, so I'm going to say handle or express handlebars exp-hbs, just so we don't have to write out express handlebars express handlebars. We also need Mongoose, which is going to obviously allow us to connect to MongoDB. Now, if you don't know how to connect to MongoDB or you haven't got MongoDB installed, I suggest you go and look into how to install MongoDB with Homebrew or something similar. So in here, we're just going to type Mongoose. We then want to get Passport, and we're going to set this equal to require Passport. By the way, tabbing them out as far as I've tabbed them out is probably a bit overkill. We're going to get this local strategy. I forgot how to spell strategy then. And say require. And this is just going to be passport-local.strategy. And sorry, what I was saying about these being tabbed out so far, you probably don't need to tab them out this far. It's just I wanted them to all be in line because I think it makes it look cleaner. It's easier to read. We're also going to need something called bcrypt, and I'm not actually sure we installed it. We did not install it. My bad. Let me install that now quickly. So to install that, let's head back over here. Let's run npm i bcrypt like that. Now, I think that's the last one we need. So let's just hit enter, and that should now install. Okay, that's now installed, which is good. It's installed over here, so let's just clear this, go back and back in our app, and then we can go it's equal to require bcrypt. Now what bcrypt does is it allows us to hash our passwords, and what hashing our password allows us to do basically means in the if someone hacks our database, they're going to see a bunch of random letters and numbers, and they'll never actually be able to decrypt those passwords. Well, it's never say never, it's not impossible, but it's hard. Anyway, there we go. So we've got our app set up too. So we're going to set app equal to our express, and there we go. So that's everything we need to do. Now we need to connect to Mongo's database. So we're going to say mongoose.connect, and you need to have your Mongo database running. I have my database running all the time, so I can just say localhost 27017 / and we can name this whatever we want. I'm going to name this node auth YouTube. Oh, and then we need to pass some parameters. So we need something called use new URL parser to true, and also use unified topology to true. Now, please don't ask me what these do. I have no idea. It's just every time you run it without, if you run mongoose.connect without these, it'll throw some warnings about you need to have these in. So yeah. I don't know why they don't just set those to true automatically if they need it, but you know, who knows. Anyway, so let's say const, well, sorry, what am I doing? So yeah, we've got all these set up. The next part we need to do is actually enable handlebars. So we need to say app.engine, or I'm going to just call this bit middleware. Now we need to say app.engine is equal to handlebars, so HBS. And then we're going to say, well, I'm also going to rename handlebars to HBS as well. I think that just works better. There you go, HBS. And then in here we can just say, so we're going to call HBS a function, and we're going to say the extension name is equal to .hbs. Now the reason we're doing this is because by default it's .handlebars, literally .handlebars, but I think that's too long-winded. I hate long-winded extension names, so we're just doing the shorthand version of setting it to .hbs. We're then going to say app.set, and we're going to set the view engine to HBS. Now that's actually what sets our engine, but this is what initializes our engine. So what we need to do now is say app.use express.static __ dir name plus / and then whatever you want, but I'm going to say public. So what this is doing is it means we can actually add like CSS or images or whatever we want to the public file and be able to call them inside of our handlebars or our HTML and whatnot. So this is a public folder. This means it's accessible to anyone. We're then going to also say app.use session. Now, obviously, we imported session up here, and there's express session. And what we need to do here is basically set up a few variables. We need a secret key. Now the secret key, you should really have an environment variable. So you could say env.secret. But because this is just a tutorial, we're going to set up, we're just literally going to pass through very good secret. No one's going to guess that. It's fine. But yeah, I would put these in an env package and export them and then import them in here so you can actually use them. But for now, we don't need to do that. We're also going to set resave to false and save uninitialized to true. We're then going to say app.use, and we're going to use express.url encoded. I'm going to say extended false. Now this just allows us to express to parse data. You used to have to import body parser to do this, but now you can do this directly in Express, which is really useful. And we're also going to say app.use express.json. This may be for testing, but we'll also do it anyway. So this is all the middleware we need. That is all we need for this. Well, all the default middleware. So all this is just here to help out and assist. What we need to do next is actually set up our passport.json stuff. So what we're going to say is app.use passport.initialize. Now you always need to initialize it. It's the first thing you need to do with Passport. Obviously you need to set it up. We then need to see app.use passport.session. Now obviously we want sessions in this, so when you're moving around page and that and you're refreshing the page, you're not going to log yourself out. We want to keep our session running, and obviously when you come back it will still be logged in. Let's go passport.serialize user. Now what this does is when we log in, we serialize and deserialize our user. And what we need to do, basically what we need to do here is just say done, which is the callback we're passing through, which will be returned by Passport itself, and then the user.id. So what serialize does is it will save serialize to our request. So we can go request.user and get the user information from there, which we can deserialize as well. So we actually need to set up deserialization, which is passport.deserialize, oh my god, can't talk, which will go pass another function which pass an ID, done, and then in here we need to actually get our user model. So we need to set up user model, which we're going to do now. In Mongoose, you set up models and schemas to handle your user. Now we could create a new, normally you'd create a new folder called models and then create a /user.js in there. But I think for this tutorial, we're actually going to just do it in here. When I normally make this, I normally put in a separate folder, but for now I feel like we can do this in a one app just to save the extra folder. So let's create a new const user schema, and we're going to set this equal to a new mongoose.schema, and all we need to do in here is say username is equal to an object, and we're going to give it the type of string, and we're going to say required is equal to true. This means we require it and we need it, so if you don't pass it, it will throw a hissy fit. It'll be like, no, what are you doing? And then we need our password, which also needs to be a type of string. There's no such thing as a type of password, so we need a type of string, which we're going to hash, and then we're going to say require true, because we also need to require a password. Then what we need to say is a const user is equal to mongoose.model user from the user schema. So we're going to model a user from this schema. So now we have user here. So if we go down, we can actually now in here say user dot find by ID, because we need to look for this user. We need to pass through that ID, and then on success or on error, say user. Oh, we're just going to pass through done and error or user. So what I've done something wrong here. There's a double. There we go. There was a double. There you go. It was rogue. There was a rogue parenthesis. So what we're saying here is we're just finding a so we're getting, when we deserialize, we need to find the user. which is our serialize. We serialize a user into our request, right? And then what we do is, if we need the user's details, we deserialize it by finding the user's ID and then passing back the user. That's the deserialization. Now we need to set up our strategy. So we've got to say passport.use, and we're going to say new local strategy, which we imported above. I am failing to put a semicolon down. Then we just need to pass through a function. This actually can be on one line. We need to pass through a function that will take in a username, a password, and the callback again. And then we need to say, again, user.find one, but this time we're going to find him by his username or her username. And then once again, we're going to have another function that will take in an error and the user. And now we're just going to say if error, we're just going to return. We're going to return done with error. But if there is no user, so when we try, so what happens here? So this is what's going to happen when we try to log in. When we try to log in, it's going to look to use the local strategy. We're going to pass through the username and password, and we're going to try and find that username to see if it already exists. If there's no user, then it means the user doesn't exist, and we need to say the user does not exist. So what we're going to do here is say return done. We're going to say null. We're going to say false. So we're just going to say the error is null. User is false, but we can also pass through a message, and the message we're going to pass through is incorrect username, because it means we'll have an incorrect username. We could also put this onto one line as well. We then want to say bcrypt. So we actually want to get bcrypt now, because we need to compare our passwords with our hash. So we're going to say password with the user.password, and then we need to pass a function which will take in an error and a response. And we're going to say if there's an error, return done error. Let me just put brackets around that, or we don't need brackets. I'm being picky. We could literally remove all the brackets just to make it look cleaner. There you go. So we're going to say if there's an error, then we're going to return the error again. But if there's result is equal to false, we're also going to say return done null false, and we're just going to say message incorrect password. So all we're doing here, again, we can put this on one line. All we're doing here is basically saying if there's no result, if the result is equal to false, meaning the password does not match, then the password is incorrect and we need to return an error. But if it is true and it works, we can say return done null and user. So what we're doing here is we're saying if it's false, then we're going to throw an error. But if that doesn't get called, then we're just going to say done, and we're going to pass the user, meaning the password was correct, and we can now actually sign in. So this is going to be our strategy we use. So all this does is once we call login and we say, is it authenticated? This is what's going to happen here. We're going to try and find the user. We're going to log it in. That's great. But now let's set up our routes. Let's set up our application to see what's happening. So let's say // and then we're going to say request response, and we're just going to say rest.render index. It is going to be our home, and we're going to pass through a title called home. So what this rest.render does is it renders from a template in a view folder. So we need to create a new folder, call it views, and inside this folder we need to create another folder called layouts. And inside that, you need to pass through new, and you just got to call a main.handlebars. And there you go. We've got a new layout. So if we do !tab, we can pass through the title by doing exclamation, like we do in Vue.js. If you followed along with the Vue.js tutorials, we can do handlebars, and then we can pass through whatever we gave in here. So this here, title, which we pass through here, which will then display the title on screen. We can then go into our body and say .app, and we can pass through with 3 handlebars now and say body, because it's going to return the body template. To get the body template, we need to go into Fuse and create a new file and call this index.handlebars. And the reason we're calling it index is because we call render index. So whatever we put here, index or whatever else, we'll call this file here. Now this layout is called automatically, but if you don't want layouts, I believe you can call layout false or use layout. I'm not 100% sure, you'd have to do a quick bit of research, but you can disable layouts if you just want to have everything in one file. But now what we do in this handlebars, this home page, is we can literally say like dot home. We can pass through a h1, say home, and we can have an anchor tag that says slash logout, and we can say log out. So now that's what's going to get. So let's start our server. Let's say app.listen 3000, and then we can say we could do an arrow function, and inside of here we're just going to run log, and we're just going to say listening on port 3000. Save. Oh, that should no longer be running. Let's just refresh that. Good. Let's remove it. And now what we need to do is remember the function we set up, npm start, which is going to call nodemon, which is going to allow it to work. And now that listen on port has been called, that means it's working. So let's refresh, and there you go. You can see we've got our template imported in. Now we can add CSS to this template, so we need to create our public folder. So we need to create public /main.css. Now in here we can just pass in something normal, so margin, padding 0, box sizing, border box, and font family Vira, Sans, and sans serif. Now this isn't going to work straight away. We have to go into our layout, and we have to obviously link this. So we need to say link. Now with how it works, so if we go to our app, we called in our thing, we said express.use static folder with our directory name, which is, it will give us the root directory, plus public, right? And what that means is this public folder is going to be whatever we put /, if we put /... in here, that is going to try, if there's no root for it, it's going to try and look in our public folder, and if there's no public folder for it, it's then going to just throw a 404. If there's no in our public folder, sorry. So now what we need to do is go into our main, and we can just say main.css. And we don't need to put / public because it's actually calling straight in there. So wherever we call, it's going to go straight in there for our public folder. So if we refresh, you can see it's now called. If we go /main.css, you can see we can actually see the file through that. And we don't, if we did / public /main.css, that would not work because it cannot get public. So there you go. That's how you do that. And as you can see, we've got our first homepage set up. Let's actually style it then. Let's start off by saying body background color is equal to 2f4960. We're then going to say background image is equal to linear gradient to bottom right hashtag 2f4960 at 10%, and then we're going to say hashtag 10 20 40 at 120%. We can actually leave that and see what that looks like. Oh, we also need to go .app and say display flex, align item center, justify content center. We need to say width 100, and then we just say now the min height is equal to 100 VH. That width is unnecessary. There you go. Now that's centered everything. Now we can just say .home, and in our .home we can easily just display that as a block. Well, it's already a block, we don't need to. We just need to say max width 400 pixels, padding 50 pixels, 30 pixels, background color white, and then border radius of 16 pixels. Hit save, refresh, and there you go, we've got a little thing. We actually need to set that as a width 100% as well. There you go. And now we can just go in here and say .home h, or you know what, we can do it in here. We'll just say text text align center. There you go. Now that's all centered and it's looking good. So the next step is to actually create our logout. 'Cause logout, we need to create our we need to redirect it, and we need to authenticate our home because we can't actually be on home. But first, let's create our logout page. So to do that, we need to set up a new route. So underneath this one, let's actually add a comment up here and call it routes. Now under here, we can say app.get /login request response. And then in here, we do the exact same thing by just going res.render, and we can say login. We then need to pass through our title of login. And now if we go into Fuse, create a new file and call it login.handlebars, we can create a form which has the action of /login with the method of type post. We can have a div with a h1 which says login, another form group which is going to have a label in it which says .div4. It'll just say username, and in our input of type text, we're just going to say username, and we're going to give it a placeholder of enter your username. Oh, and we also need to set this to required because we're going to require it. I'm just going to break these down because I think it looks a bit neater. And then we need to create another form group. And inside here, we need another label. This one is going to be password. We then need an input of type password with the name of password and an ID of password with also required and placeholder equal to enter your password. Let's move required to the end and keep it consistent because I haven't done that. And once again, I'm just going to quickly break these all down. And required. Okay, bring those across. And that is almost everything. We just need one more div with an input of type submit and a value of login. There you go. So if we go, well, we actually need to go, well, no, we've done that. So let's go here and let's actually type /login. And as you can see, we have this very ugly login page. Let's style this up a little. Okay, so for our CSS, we're going to write form display block. There we go. Width 100%. Max width of 400 pixels. Padding of 50 pixels, 30 pixels. We're going to give it a background image of linear gradient to bottom. I'm going to say hashtag 00BC7E. We're then going to give a enough color of 108775. Now, feel free to use your own colors or whatever you want here. This is just a guideline. 12 pixels, RGBA 0000.2. And border radius of 16 pixels. Hit save, refresh, and there you go. That's looking a bit better. Let's say form h1. We'll give it a color of white, a font size of 36 pixels. That's font style, size please. A text transform of uppercase and a margin bottom of 30 pixels. There you go, looking much better. Let's do our error message. So we're going to pass through an error message. We're not going to do it yet, but it will be called, we'll have it at 10 pixels, 15 pixels, background color white. It will have a border radius of 8 pixels, a margin bottom of 15 pixels, a color of red, and a box shadow of, again, 0.6 pixels, 12 pixels, RGBA 0.2. We're then going to do a form with a form group, and inside the form group we're just going to have margin bottom 30 pixels, which is fine. We're then going to say form label, and we're going to display that as a block. We're going to give that a color of EEE, hashtag EEE. We're then going to give it a font size of about 14 pixels to make it smaller, a margin bottom of 5 pixels. We're then going to say form input, not from input, excuse me, you are wrong. We're just going to style the input with appearance, none, background, none, outline, none, and lastly, border, none. Now we're gonna, so if we go back and let's just refresh, there you go. So this is what it's looking like so far. Not very pretty, but it's getting there. Let's now add in a form input, not input, input, and then we're gonna check if it's not equal to type of submit. So all we're doing here is saying, checking if this input is not equal to type of submit, because we don't want it to match the type of submit. And if it doesn't match, we're going to give it a display of blocks, a width of 100%, a padding of 15 pixels, a border radius of 16 pixels, or 8 pixels, sorry. We're going to set the background color to about RGBA 0.2, and the box shadow, once again, is going to be 0 pixels, 6 pixels, 12 pixels. Oh no, sorry, this is going to be 0 pixels because we actually want to transition this. And then we're going to say transition 0.4. We actually need to set a color as well. We'll set this to about 222. A font size of around 18 pixels. A font weight of 300 to make it thin. Let's have a look what this looks like. There you go. It's looking alright, but it just looks a bit weird. So we need to copy this, go to the bottom of our page and check the placeholder. And what we're going to do with the placeholder is make it a color of CCC. There you go. That looks a lot better already, but it's not perfect. So let's do the same thing again. But this time replace the placeholder with a focus. We also want to say form input not type equal, oh, we're missing the square brackets, type equal to submit, and we're checking if it's valid. So if it has a value, we're just going to say background color white, box shadow is going to be equal to 0 pixels, 6 pixels, 12 pixels, RGBA 0.2. So if we go back and we refresh, when you click on it, you can see it becomes nice, and it looks like it pops off the screen slightly, which is nice. Same with the password. You can see it does the exact same thing. But if we put text in here, you can see it now stays, and that's because of the valid pseudo selector we just used. Now finally, we just need to do the buttons. So let's just go form input, and this time we're going to say type submit, and we're just going to say D block. We're pretty much going to actually steal this, but we're going to replace the color with white. We're going to replace the font size with 20 pixels, the font weight with 700. Box shadow is good. The background color should actually be this one, and I think there you go. That is our button all set up and ready to go, except we need to do cursor pointer, and there you go. We can now click login, and that will attempt to log in. Now that's all the styling we're going to be doing. So we're going to remove this, and we're then going to, we're also going to close our handlebars because we'll finish with all of these files now for the time being. We just need to be back in our app.js file. So what we've done so far is we've set up login, but the issue is we can still go back to homepage, and we can also, well, the logout isn't set up yet, but we can also go to /login as well. So what we need to do is we need to make sure login redirects us back to redirects us back to login if we're not logged in. So to do that, we need to go back to our app. We need to create a function underneath passport routes. We're just going to say function is logged in. We're going to say request, response, and next. And all we're going to say if request dot is authenticated. So if we're authenticated, we're going to return next. Else, we're just going to say rest.redirect /login. So what's happening here is we're calling a function. We're going to pass it as our second parameter on the get request, which means before it actually renders the home page, it's going to actually check if we're logged in, and if we're not, it's going to take us to the logout page. So let's go here, let's refresh. If we try to go back to the /, you can see it now redirects us away. So now we need to log in. Problem is we can't actually log in because we don't have any users set up. So we're actually going to use a piece of code I've already written. Here it is. It's right here. It's just going to say set up our admin user. Now I'm going to explain this. I just wanted to paste it in because it's quite a big hefty piece of machinery. So we're going to set up a route called setup, which go use async, and we're going to get a request and response. We're going to check if a user called admin already exists, and if the user does exist, then we're just going to return to the login page and return. But if he doesn't exist, we're going to use bcrypt to generate a new salt. Then we're going to pass the salt here. We're then going to hash our password, and our password is my password. I'm actually going to just put this as pass because my password is really too long to keep typing out. We're then passing our salt, which we generate. So our salt is what we're going to use to hash our password. We're then going to do a function called we're going to call the function, which is actually going to pass the hashed password back as hash. And then if there's an error, we're going to throw the error, or call next. But then we're going to create a new admin user. So using our model we created up here, we're going to create a new one, which is going to be called admin, and set its password to hash. And then we can say new admin.save and then redirect us to the login page. So what's actually happening here is this, normally you would obviously set up your own register page, and you'd probably do something like this to set up your first admin user login. And this is kind of what we're doing right now. We're setting up our first ever login, but obviously for the rest of your users, if you're having multiple users, you're going to want them to do the exact same thing, but probably without the exit. Well, you're going to need to check that. You're going to need all of this, essentially. You just need to do a register, and this needs to be a post. And then you need to pass through your actual password and username and whatever else you want. But for this one, we're just going to do the cheaty way and just set up an admin like this. So now we need to go /setup. We need to hit enter, and it's going to redirect us to login. Now, if we try to do that again, we should get redirected to login. Perfect. So let's just console.login here and just say exists. So if we now go to setup one last time, and we now go back to our home page, you can see it says exists, which means it does exist, and that worked. So now we're set up. So now we have a user in our MongoDB database. So what we need to do is actually try and log in. And to do that, we need to actually create a login route, which isn't a get request. We need to actually do a post request. So after our login request, we're going to do another login request, but this one's going to be a type of post. We're then going to say passport.authenticate, and we're going to choose our strategy. Now we're going to choose local because we are using a local strategy up here, as you can see, local strategy. And then we need to pass through a few, an object. And in the object, we're going to have success redirect. Now, what success redirect does is it allows us to choose once we've logged in, if we successfully log in, where do we want to go? We want to go to home, so we're just going to put /. We then want a failure redirect, and if we fail, we want to go to /login, because we don't want to obviously log out, but we also want to pass through error equal to true. Now, the reason we're passing through error is equal to true is because we want to be able to check if if there's been an error or whatever the error is. So we're passing that down here. Now, you can use something called flash, which will allow you to flash error messages and pass them around. But for now, we're just going to use the simpler method of passing through a query string. So if we go back to our login handlebars, we just got to make sure our action is set to post, our method is set to post, and our action is set to login, which it is, which is good. We also need to make sure our login strategy here is getting username and password correctly, because when we pass through our login form, we're passing through our username and our password, which is correct. Cool. So now all we need to do is attempt to log in. So if we just type in our password, admin, and our username, which is pass, there you go, it's logged us in. Now, if we tried to go back to login, you can see we can, but we're actually already logged in because we can actually go to home. So let me just, if I now save in here, it should log me out. There you go, it's logged me out. So what we need to do is we need to actually set up another one. So we need to actually copy the isLoggedIn function and create an isLoggedOut. And all we need to do is say it's not equal to authenticated. Then we're going to return next, else we're going to go. So all we're doing is flipping it around, and in our login, we're just going to pass isLoggedOut like this. And that should allow us, when we're logged in, we need to actually log in. Our password is pass, login. Now, if we try to go back to login, we got an error. Why did we get an error? No one knows. It's because our isLoggedOut is erroring somehow. Request, response, next, request.isAuthenticated. Oh, we're trying to go back to login. Obviously, if we log out, then we need to go back to login page. There you go. So now we can go to, let's try that again, admin, pass, we're logged in. And now if we try to go to the login page, you can see it's just going to redirect us back to home because we're already logged in. Now we need to set up our logout because we can't actually log out now unless I save in here and reset the session. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a logout route. So under here, we're going to say app, oh, not abort controller, app.get/logout. Now we're going to pass through a function, and our function is going to be equal to request, response, and all we're going to say is request.log. Oh, how did I even write that? Request.logout, and we can call it as a function, and then we're just going to say rest.redirect to /. So that is all we need to do for our logout route. We also need a / at the front of that. So let's refresh. Let's log back in. Let's say admin, pass. And now let's hit log out, and as you can see, it logs us out successfully. So now we have a full loop. We can log in, we can log out, we can't get to home unless we're logged in, and we can't get to log in unless we're logged out. That's a tongue twister. But now if we throw in an error in here, let's just say admin and put our password as Dave. You can see it doesn't say anything. We've got our error is true up there, but it doesn't actually do anything. So now what we need to do is actually go to our login route, and we need to pass an extra parameter. So we need to say here, we're going to create a let response equal an object, and in this object we're going to still pass through our title of login, but we're also going to pass through our error, and we're going to set the error is equal to request.query.error. And what that's going to do, it's going to check if we have error in our query, and it's going to pass through the value we have set it to, which is going to be true. So what we need to do is replace this and say response. And that way, if we can also set this to a constant. That way, when we go to login, if we refresh, oh, you can't actually see anything happening. We need to go to our login, and we need to set in here we're going to say p dot, what was the class we created for this? Was it error message? There it is, it's this. So we need to add this class to our paragraph here. So we just need to say, we need to say hashtag if error. So we're checking if there's an error. And to end this, if we do \if, we're then going to say, so if there's an error, we're going to say p.errorMessage. And then we can pass through our error message, which is going to be username or password is incorrect. That's it. So we're just going to check that. Now, if we go back, we refresh, you can see we get the username or password is incorrect. So if we remove this error, you can see we get nothing. And let's just say admin or Dave. We're going to log in as Dave. You can see it says username or password is incorrect. Perfect. So let's just try something else. Let's say admin and pass, or not pass. Let's just put Dave in there. You can see we still get the error. Last try, let's say admin and pass. And there you go, we're now logged in. So we managed to successfully build a secured, authenticated admin area. Now you can expand this. You can also create other routes. So you can create, let's say, an about route. It's going to use the exact same, but we're just going to change the title to about as well. So in here, if we just go /about, you can see, it's logged us out because we made a change to the system. So let's just say pass. Now, if we go to /about, hit enter, you can see nothing's changed here, but up here, we've actually changed what we've put in. And if we go to our index here, we can actually change this to be title. If we refresh, you can see it now changes. So if we go back to home, we're at home, /about. But if we log out, and then we try to go to /about, we get the same error. Now you can actually set routes they're allowed to go to by literally just removing the /. So if we now go back to about, you can see we can get there, but we still can't get to home. It just brings us to the login page. So you can set specific routes you want to be authenticated and what you don't want to be authenticated by just using the isLoggedIn command. Now, I suggest you take this into practice. You split it off into individual files. You use the MVC approach. You have your views, you have models, and you have controllers, all in different folders, in different files. So you clean up this. We've done it in one page. It's quite messy. I'm challenging you guys to successfully split this off into different parts and get it working that way, guys. Okay guys, this marks the end of our tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial. If you have, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, leave a comment if you have any questions, and smash that subscribe button if you want to see more. For now guys, thank you for watching this video, and peace out.